Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodha Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodha Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodha Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottarasata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astottarasata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki Mayapur Navadvip Dhama ki Ganga Mai ki Yamuna Mai ki Bhakti Devi ki Tulsi Maharani ki Samaveta Bhaktavrinda ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyaham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitantang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning, being Ekadashi, we will read from Srila Prabhupada's lilamrta, starting with chapter 4 of volume 5. Volume 5 is entitled Around the World 1968 to 1971, and chapter 4 is entitled India Dancing White Elephants. Calcutta, August 29, 1970. For the first time in almost 3 years, Prabhupada returned to India, to Calcutta, his hometown. Although it was late and the journey from Tokyo had been 12 hours, Prabhupada felt happy as he descended the stairway from the airplane. Achyutananda and Jayapataka, his only American disciples in India, were standing on the airfield, and as they saw him approaching in his saffron silk robes, they bowed down. Prabhupada smiled and embraced them. They ushered him into a flower-bedecked car and accompanied him to the terminal building, where he entered the VIP lounge. Some of Prabhupada's godbrothers and old Calcutta friends were present to receive him, and a kirtan party from the Chaitanya Mat was chanting. The reception was large and festive. As the room resounded with Hare Krishna, Prabhupada took his seat. The sound of the kirtan, the many pictures of Krishna, and the smell of incense and jasmine flowers combined with Prabhupada's transcendental presence to transform the drab airport into a heavenly scene. Indians crowded forward to place flower garlands around Prabhupada's neck, and as the garlands piled higher, Prabhupada removed them. But the garlands kept coming, and again they piled up, almost covering Prabhupada's face. The American devotees watched in fascination as the Bengali brahmacharis played their mridangas with exotic rhythms. The people in the crowd pressed in closer to touch Prabhupada's feet and ask his blessings, and Prabhupada smiled, seeming quite at home. When the kirtan ended, he began to speak. Quote, I am coming back to the city after 3 years. Hare Krishna. I have been around the world and found that happiness and peace cannot be established in this world by materialistic advancement. I have seen Japan, which is highly advanced in machines and technology, yet there is no real happiness there. But the people of India, even if they do not understand the significance of Sankirtan, they enjoy listening to it. My advice to the Indians is that if you advance only in science and technology without paying attention to Harinam, then you will remain forever backward. There is tremendous strength in Harinam. Reporter, you have said, and I quote, even communism, if it is without Krishna Nam, is void. Why do you say that? Prabhupada, why do you refer to communism in particular? Without Krishna consciousness, everything is void. Whatever you do, Krishna must remain in the center. Whether you are communist or capitalist or anything else, it doesn't matter. We want to see whether your activities are centered around Krishna. Reporter, right now there is too much turmoil in Bengal. What is your advice to us at this time? Prabhupada, my advice is to chant Hare Krishna. This is the piece of advice to both the capitalist and the communist. All animosity between them will cease completely, and all their problems will be solved if they take this advice. The crowd, affirming Prabhupada's words, began to shout, Sadhu, Sadhu. Prabhupada sat in the back seat on his way from the airport to the home of Mr. Das Gupta on Hindustan Road. Outside the car window, the familiar scenes of Calcutta passed by. For the newcomers riding with him, however, Calcutta was foreign and unfamiliar. Gaunt, loitering cows and street dogs, small horses pulling huge loads, barefoot rickshawalas, open shops with exotic foods, dense crowds of pedestrians, the sultry heat, and the incredible traffic. These, although familiar to Prabhupada, plunged the disciples who had flown with him into culture shock. Tamal Krishna looked nervously at the driver who swerved in and out of traffic, honking his horn. Prabhupada laughed softly. Tamal Krishna, how do you like this driving? I guess this is familiar for all of us, right? First time going to India, the driving, the sights, the sounds, and the smells. Very, very interestingly shocking to us, and takes some time to get used to. Achyutananda and Jayapataka, however, were acclimatized to Calcutta and had learned to appreciate its culture. They had met high-class cultured Bengalis who accepted them as sadhus despite their American birth. They had preached in many homes and had attracted curious crowds by chanting in public. They had not, however, achieved a solid foothold for ISKCON. But now Prabhupada had come to change that. He would preach wonderfully, just as he had done in America. And his disciples were eager to serve as his instruments. He would be their vital force, their inspiration, for he was empowered by Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada reached the home of Mr. Das Gupta at almost midnight. Many people wanted to see him, and when Devananda Maharaj tried to turn them away, Prabhupada said, "No, let them come in." Prabhupada's sister Bhavatarini arrived with an array of special dishes she had cooked. "We can't eat now," one of the sannyasis protested. "It's late at night." "No," Prabhupada said, "we must eat everything. Whatever my sister cooks, we have to eat. This is her favorite activity. She likes to cook for me and feed me. Everyone must take prasadam." Must have been fun being with Prabhupada, eating at 1 a.m, a huge feast. The devotees at the Chaitanya Math had also cooked a feast, and as Prabhupada was honoring the prasadam prepared by his sister, the prasadam from the Chaitanya Math had arrived. He took a little and induced his followers to eat sumptuously. It was 1 a.m. Prabhupada sat in his room with Achyutananda, Jayapataka and Devananda Maharaj. He explained how irresponsible letters from his disciples in India had perpetrated within ISKCON a deep misunderstanding of the spiritual master's position. So, a short while before this, it was quite nicely read, I guess, in the previous reading session. But Prabhupada had detected that there was an undercurrent of dissension from some of his disciples, and this dissension, this contamination had emanated from somewhere in India, where some of his disciples who were based in India at that time, just a few of them, were being influenced not to have to have a very, very high regard and commitment to Srila Prabhupada as their spiritual master, as the founder Acharya of ISKCON. It was very subtle hints and subtle influences that were posed upon them, but then it entered into their consciousness, contaminated them, and they started to then spread a similar type of mood through their letters to the devotees back in America. And as a result, Prabhupada noticed a few inconsistencies in the behavior and dealings with his disciples. On one occasion, he noticed that a publication had left out the full title, Founder Acharya, left out His Divine Grace and the honorific Prabhupada. So Prabhupada detected like this a few things, and then determined that it's a conspiracy aimed at removing him from his position as the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And therefore Prabhupada acted very swiftly to protect and safeguard ISKCON. And ISKCON really means, it means many things, but of course the foundation of it is a very, very strong and unbreakable understanding and acceptance of Prabhupada's position as the founder Acharya, the founder spiritual master of the movement. If ISKCON is devoid of that understanding, then there is really no ISKCON. There is really no ISKCON. There's nothing to ISKCON if Prabhupada is excluded out of that position as the founder Acharya. Incidentally, Prabhupada whenever he would introduce himself in his letters or to some important person, Prabhupada never really presented himself as, I am the spiritual master of devotees in ISKCON. Prabhupada's introduction was always what? I am the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He was very, very concerned that that position must always be maintained. Not in an egocentric type of way, not to preserve his position for his own needs, but Prabhupada knew that this needed to be done in order to safeguard the spiritual growth of his fledgling movement, in terms of giving everyone a structure by which they can assimilate the philosophical teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and through his tailored presentation, through his understanding of the time, place and circumstances, especially in the West and in India, but especially in the West, Prabhupada tailored the presentation accordingly. So Prabhupada was very concerned not to have that dismantled in any way. He explained how irresponsible letters from his disciples in India had perpetrated within ISKCON a deep misunderstanding of the spiritual master's position. He quoted the verse, Shakshad Haritvena Samasta Shastrair, and explained it. The Guru is on an equal level with Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not God, but he is the dearmost servant of God. Prabhupada continued preaching to his disciples, clearing away any misconceptions about the spiritual master's position. All the past unpleasant events, he said, were now being rectified. The devotees should continue working together with new life and vigor. Just before this was Srila Prabhupada's Janmashtami and Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, which Srila Prabhupada had observed in the Far East. But at the same time, in West Virginia, New Vrindavan, some of the devotees who were contaminated by the wrong understanding that was sort of coming from India about Srila Prabhupada, they understood Srila Prabhupada's displeasure and his concern and his anger about the whole situation. So they felt very remorseful, and then what they did is, in an attempt to immaturely compensate for it, they went to the other extreme. Instead of, earlier they were sort of minimizing Prabhupada's position, they went to another extreme and they started claiming to all the devotees, and these were some of the most senior devotees in the movement at that time. They started saying, actually, what we didn't realize is that Prabhupada is actually God. This was their new doctrine that they were teaching at that time. And they started that in New Vrindavan at the Janmashtami Vyasa Puja festival. Prabhupada is God. And because we haven't understood this, he's very disturbed with us, and therefore he has left us. So now we must understand he is God. So the devotees were very bewildered, and headed by some of the senior devotees, I think it was Rupanuga Prabhu and a few others, maybe Bhagavan Prabhu at that time. They carefully considered everything. They went back to Prabhupada's books, understood what Prabhupada, and they sort of debated with these sannyasis and dismantled their understanding. And Prabhupada saw that as another sort of attempt to unseat him from his position. How did Prabhupada see it? In a very amazing way. Prabhupada said, just see, now they want to take me upstairs to a higher position, to the position of God. And that means the vacancy of founder Acharya is left empty for someone else to come and take. This is how Prabhupada saw it. And then later, not too long later, Prabhupada commented, Madhuvesha Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's closest disciples, commented that he heard this from Prabhupada, that actually the only offense greater than underestimating the position of the spiritual master is to overestimate it. Prabhupada said like that. And this is where we can understand how the Ritvik philosophy is so offensive to Prabhupada. Because they have gone to great lengths to overestimate his position against the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, against the philosophy of Vedic understanding, against the understanding of what the parampara is. So it's a great offense because you are overestimating Prabhupada's position. And sometimes we may glorify Prabhupada and think, how can one ever overestimate? His glory is like we hear, his fame is spread all over the three worlds. How can there be a limit to it? So it's not incorrect to say this and say this. He's the only one. No. But Prabhupada exists. He sacrificed so much to present the Vedic teachings in its purity, without any dilution, without any deviation. So now in his name, if we were to teach Vedic understanding incorrectly, is that glorifying Prabhupada or an insult to Prabhupada? You understand? It's actually an insult to him. So like this, to overestimate is also a grave problem. Achyutananda asked Prabhupada if he could take sannyas. The Indians, he said, would respect a sannyasi more. Prabhupada agreed that sannyas would help Achyutananda's preaching, and he said that Jayapataka should also take sannyas. If my memory serves me correctly, Jayapataka Maharaj may have been about 20 years old at that time. Yeah, just about 20, I think, thereabout. The ceremony would be in a week on Radhastami. And Jayapataka Maharaj has been exemplary ever since then. Just quite amazing. Quite an amazing devotee of Lord Chaitanya and Prabhupada. Actually, once, you all may have remembered one wonderful devotee, disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, who had extensive association since 1970-71 with Prabhupada, Srinathji Prabhu, visited here one Radhastami day actually. Just suddenly pitched up here. And we had him speak together with Devamrita Swami and Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. And he tells a story that 1970-71 or so, his father, who was very appreciative of Prabhupada and also very influential, Prabhupada had asked his father to help get Indian visas or citizenship for some devotees, especially for Jayapataka Maharaj. And within Srinathji Prabhu's hearing, Prabhupada said to his father, see that devotee there pointing to Jayapataka Maharaj? He said, he is an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada said that about Lord Chaitanya. And this is what we heard from Srinathji Das Prabhu. So that's quite a thing, right? How Prabhupada saw his disciples. Very, very special indeed. The Amrita Bazar Patrika carried a front-page news story of Prabhupada's arrival. A photo showed Prabhupada walking with his hand in his bead bag, surrounded by young sannyasis carrying dandas. Many VIPs have come to Dum Dum Airport. Many VIPs have come to Dum Dum Airport before, but never have we seen gaiety and celebrations of this magnitude. It was difficult to imagine that he was 75 years old because he was completely fresh after this long journey. With a little smile on his face, he blessed one and all with the word Haribol. Prabhupada wrote to the devotees in Japan, in India, from the very moment we stepped down from the airplane, there is good propaganda work going on. The boy Bruce is improving and becoming more interested. He has now sacrificed his hairs for Krishna, and that is a good sign. You know who Bruce is? Anybody know? The boy from Japan? One of the most illustrious translators of scriptures in our movement. His Holiness Bhanu Swami. It's Bruce. Calcutta was in a political turmoil. A group of communist terrorists, the Naxalites, had been rioting, murdering prominent businessmen and threatening the lives of many others. Many wealthy Marwari industrialists were leaving the city for Delhi and Mumbai. Aside from the terrorists, Bengali college students were growing unruly. But the older people of West Bengal, comprising most of Prabhupada's visitors, were alarmed by the violence and unrest. The only shelter, Prabhupada told them, was Krishna. Prabhupada is speaking. People are very much perturbed I guess this is in a written form. I'm not sure to who. I'm assuming by the flow of it also to the devotees in Japan. People are very much perturbed, are in a very much perturbed condition. All of them are expecting me to do something for ameliorating the situation. But I am simply advising them to chant Hare Krishna, because this transcendental sound is the only panacea for all material diseases. So earlier, as we read, when Prabhupada arrived at the VIP lounge at the Dum Dum airport, the reporter had asked him questions, and Prabhupada just redirected all the solutions to chanting Hare Krishna, the holy name. And again, Prabhupada is saying the same thing, exactly the same thing. No need for any other intervention, any other formulation. Simply chant Krishna's holy name, because this transcendental sound is the only panacea for all material diseases. Prabhupada saw no need to fabricate a special program for the social problems of Calcutta. Chanting Hare Krishna was the only panacea for all material diseases. The question was how to best use his American disciples to give this panacea to the Indians. Prabhupada had his party of 10 devotees, and he had asked his leaders in the West for 20 more within the month. He had ordered, listen to this figure, this is 1970, he had ordered $60,000 worth of books and magazines from Dai Nippon, and his sannyasis were going daily into the streets to perform kirtan. $60,000, 54 years ago, is a lot of money. I mean, I don't know how you calculate in terms of inflation, but it's probably worth a couple of $100,000 now. And that was Prabhupada's first investment of books. So if you want to start something, you need ammunition. You can't come there empty-handed to wage war on Maya in India. Prabhupada came with $60,000 worth of books. The Sankirtan party was getting a good response. Shaven-headed Westerners wearing shikas, Vaishnav tilak and saffron robes, playing kartals and mridangas, chanting Hare Krishna with heart and soul, quoting Sanskrit verses from Bhagavad Gita, affirming Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the Bengalis, this was sensational. If you think about it at that time, I mean, now it's so common to see white-bodied Westerners in India. You know, it's like, what's the big deal? Okay, maybe in a village or something they haven't seen. Maybe, even then too. But can you imagine in 1970 to see that? Like a dozen of them together. Not just like hippie-style people who were frequenting India, but shaven-headed, saffron-clad, playing mridanga, kartal, singing, speaking Sanskrit verses, speaking the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. It was just the ultimate dream of a publicist, so to speak. How can you, for a marketing person, you can't get a better recipe than this. So amazing, so very amazing. And hundreds would gather to watch. Prabhupada knew the great appeal his disciples would have. Everyone would want to see them. He therefore affectionately called them He's dancing white elephants. Mm. You ever saw elephants dancing? Never saw. It's quite a sight. When I say dancing, I mean not like, like swaying from side to side. I once saw it in 1997 in Kerala. We visited the Guruvayur temple, and there every evening there's like a chosen elephant that has the privilege of taking the Lord on a little yatra around the temple compound. And these elephants are trained up very nicely, and they have an elephant farm nearby the temple, not too far. So we visited that elephant farm with His Holiness Giriraj Swami and a number of devotees. And there, during our walk through the farm, seeing a couple of dozen elephants march started chanting kirtan, and especially in front of one elephant who started swaying very gracefully to the kirtan. It was quite a wonderful sight to see these elephants dancing. So to see an elephant dancing is not very common, but to speak of coming across a white elephant, that's impossible. But these people in India got to see both white elephants, and they are dancing. Not only dancing, but singing. So you can imagine how spectacular the sight was, how attractive. Everybody wanted to see them. These same devotees who had grown to love chanting Hare Krishna in the streets of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York were now going into an exhausting heat never encountered in America, and chanting on Dalhousie Square for several hours daily. Crowds would press in closely, sometimes teasing, laughing or scoffing, but more often looking on with deep amazement. So no matter what the purpose of attraction was, whether it was teasing, laughing, or scoffing, the fact is they were being influenced by hearing the holy name. This is the point, they were being influenced. However, as we'll read shortly, as we'll read shortly, our presentation has to be tailored. Yes, chanting out in the streets, and we can say, yes, no matter what the reaction is, it's going to be purifying. But sometimes, based on a strategy, our presentation has to be tailored, and some things may have to be adjusted, as we'll read shortly. Prabhupada's idea was that when Indians saw young Western people adopting the principles of Krishna consciousness, the faith of the Indians in their own culture would increase. Prabhupada explained to his disciples how formerly, during the time of Maharaj Yudhisthira, India had been a Krishna conscious state. For the last 1,000 years, however, India had been under foreign subjugation, first under the Mughals and then under the British. As a result, the intelligentsia and, to a lesser degree, the masses of India had lost respect for their own culture. Incidentally, was it yesterday? 15th, yes. India celebrated its Independence Day. Orange, white and green flags everywhere. It's a very important day. It symbolizes many things for almost 1.5 billion people. But ultimately, as Srila Prabhupada was saying earlier, if Krishna is not in the center of any activity, any initiative, including fighting for independence, what is the point? There is no point to it in the ultimate sense. As a result, in the intelligentsia and to a lesser degree the masses of India had lost respect for their own culture. They were now pursuing the materialistic goals of the West, and they saw this as more productive and more practical than religion, which was only sentimental. So this mood is still increasingly permeating throughout India, this mood. The materialistic goals of the West are so much more attractive, so much more rewarding in the minds of young Indians today, far more than what the spiritual culture of India has to offer to them. Westerners living as renounced Vaishnavas could, as Prabhupada was well aware, turned the heads and hearts of the Indians and helped them regain faith in their own lost culture. It was not a material tactic, however, but a spiritual strength. Prabhupada stressed that the devotees must be pure in their actions. This purity would be their force. The chanting in Dalhousie Square and along Chowringhee had gone on for about 10 days. And when Prabhupada had gone on for about 10 days, when Prabhupada decided to stop it. So this is what I was referring to earlier. The street kirtan, although an excellent method of preaching, was not the most effective method in India, he said. Interesting, huh? I mean, this is Calcutta. It's part of Gauda Desh, where Lord Chaitanya performed Harinam Sankirtan. But now Prabhupada is saying it's not the most effective. Why? There were many professional kirtan groups in Bengal, and Prabhupada didn't want his disciples to be seen like that, as professional performers or beggars. Because this is what the beggars would do in India. They would go on street chanting. But they weren't like just Vaishnavas. He wanted them to preach in a way that would bring them closer to the more intelligent, respectable Indians. And then he unfolded his new plan. He called it, anybody knows what his new plan was called? Life membership. His disciples would invite Indians interested in supporting and associating with ISKCON to become members. A membership fee of 1,111 rupees would entitle the member to many benefits, such as copies of Srila Prabhupada's books and free accommodation in ISKCON centers around the world. Speaking one evening in a private home before a group of wealthy businessmen, Prabhupada initiated his life membership program. After lecturing, he invited his audience to become ISKCON life members, and several Calcutta merchants immediately signed. One of them speaks, B.L. Jaju. I was really overwhelmed by the simplicity of Prabhupada's nature. He told me how he had been carrying on his regular business when his guru had told him that 400 years back, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said Hare Rama, Hare Krishna would be chanted all throughout the world. He said that that was the job given to him by his spiritual master, and that he would have to go to America to do it. I found no snobbery in him. He was very simple, and he was telling, as if my brother was telling to me, simply how he went to USA, how he started, and how gradually he planned to have this Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Seeing his disciples who had changed their lives, I began to think, why not I? In my humble way, I should do something without worrying what other people are doing. I found that imperceptibly he was affecting my life. My wife and even my son were really surprised when they found that these white people, whom we thought could never turn to Krishna consciousness, had changed so much. So we thought we must also try to follow better the teachings of the Gita. Okay, let's read until the next section. Whether at a life member's home, at a formal lecture before a large audience, or in his own room, Prabhupada continued speaking from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam about Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Of this he never tired. A guest would ask a question and Prabhupada would begin his answer by having one of his disciples read a relevant verse from the Gita. Then he would explain it. If the guest was unsubmissive and wanted to challenge, Prabhupada would argue. This was Srila Prabhupada. It was so, there's 2 points here that I see. One, Srila Prabhupada based all his presentations on the authority of Gita. And he had it there. And in his answers, in his discussions, always referenced Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And whenever the opportunity arose, Prabhupada never backed down from a debate. Never backed down. It seemed to fuel him even. It seemed to fuel him. Sitting at his low desk, occasionally drinking water from his lota, Prabhupada would talk hour after hour. The temperature rose to 100 degrees, and Prabhupada sat in his room preaching. He wore no shirt, only a simple topcloth, which left his arms, shoulders, and part of his chest bare. Sometimes the devotees sitting with him would be sick or sleepy or otherwise inattentive, and sometimes they would excuse themselves, returning hours later to find him still preaching. Guests also came and went, yet except for a nap after lunch, Prabhupada kept preaching, often throughout the day and into the night. Never bored with his subject matter, he would speak as long as there was an interested hearer. So this is somebody who clearly is in love with Krishna, right? You can't, in 100-degree heat, there's no talk of any air conditioning. 100-degree heat is like in the upper 30s, 38, 39 degrees. And he's just going on for hours and hours. So you must love what you're speaking about. His audiences varied. Sometimes he would speak to a room of husbands and wives, all cultured and well-dressed. And sometimes he would speak to one lone old man. Sometimes his audience listened quietly or argued, or even when appreciating, showed their misunderstanding. Sometimes a guest would ask him why he criticized Bengal's reputed saints and politicians, and he would then explain on the basis of Bhagavad Gita that the real sadhu always glorifies Krishna. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Especially those two verses. Mahatmanas chamam partha and Satatam kirtayanto mam. Once Srila Prabhupada was approached by some leader or some like high-level representative of some religious movement. And he said, Swamiji, India is known to be the land of Mahatmas and saintly people. And the presence of saintly people means that there should be, prosperity and, But yet we see in India there is so much of disaster, malnutrition, poverty, strife. How do we understand that? And Prabhupada's response was, the problem is that you do not know who is a Mahatma and who is not. This was his point. You do not know. Prabhupada often related his preaching to events of particular interest to his audience, such as Calcutta's political interest or the downfall of Vedic culture. Yet his concern for local affairs was only the practical necessity of the movement, for he was beyond India. He was thinking of people, places, and activities all around the world. In answering his letters, he would deeply ponder matters in England, Australia, Hawaii, or New Vrindavan. And beyond this, he would always be thinking of Krishna. He wanted to glorify Krishna throughout the world. India happened to be his present field. The devotees in India had the privilege of closely observing Prabhupada in his preaching. His superior tolerance and kindness both inspired them and, by contrast, exposed them to their own inadequacies. This is a very, for someone who's very much in touch with the character and activities of one spiritual master, who's a very advanced, renounced personality, detached personality, a personality very attached to Krishna, one has the same experience, that by seeing their tolerance, their magnanimity, it's very inspiring to us, but at the same time it can be very depressing, because then one sees your state in relation to their state. So it's very inspiring, but also very purifying. So it's very essential that whenever there's opportunities to associate with advanced, renounced devotees who are attached to Krishna, we must take that opportunity, because then we are inspired, we are amazed, have become committed to attaining to that, and we also become very aware of our own position. This is what the Association of Senior Devotees do to us. As newcomers to India, the devotees were still greatly involved with the practical affairs of living in Calcutta. Weather, disease, and culture shock distracted their minds from Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada's presence, his preaching, and his example reminded them that reality was beyond the body. His Holiness Giriraj Swami's most recent book, entitled Dancing White Elephants, has a section where Prabhupada left them in Delhi. Left him, Gurudas Prabhu, Jamuna Devi, and Bruce. I'm not sure if he was initiated by then, Bhanu Swami. And they began the preaching in Delhi. For the first time, ISKCON was preaching in Delhi. And you read that few pages, maybe 10 or 15 pages account of their experiences. It's like, forget it. You'd never want to experience such austerity. And even while experiencing dysentery, going to programs, cultivating people, and living in unclean places, just amazing what these devotees had to do, what they were inspired to do to try and please Prabhupada in some way. And Prabhupada was getting to this point that reality is beyond the body. It's beyond the body. We know when we go somewhere out of our usual place, the first thing we see is the cleanliness of the bathroom. We check if there's any things on the sheets and see if the room, otherwise we're walking out. We are walking out, right? Forget it. No, but these devotees were prepared to accept. Like once Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, in frustration in Juhu, because then the bathrooms or the toilets were just like thatched or like chatai walls. You know chatai mats? Those were the walls. So there were no like doors or something. And Prabhupada, he protested to Prabhupada, we come from the West. We can't live like this. We need door handles. Door handles. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, what's the matter? Don't you want to be purified? It's like, how do you answer that now? So sometimes we undergo austerities. Yes, ISKCON is so well established. Look at our place. Look at our place. I know sometimes when we had a lot of load shedding and we didn't have a generator or whatever, sometimes we'd get annoyed, right? We'd get annoyed. Come on. When we had it's taking a whole minute for the generator to kick in? How incompetent is the management, and why do we have to tolerate this? This is unacceptable. Or sometimes, there's water shedding now and the borehole is sometimes a little faulty. We can get agitated. But here, what the devotees are going through, what they went through to establish what we have is quite something. Quite something. It's really something. So we should be, at least for me, I feel I need to be very grateful that we have been lifted. We have been lifted up. By the hard efforts of all these amazing devotees who, let's face it, the opulence that they experienced coming from America, we even haven't experienced that type of opulence and comfort, and them to readily give it up shows that their commitment, but also shows who Prabhupada was, to extract that from them. Quite something. Sometimes the devotees criticized certain of Prabhupada's visitors. They met Indians who sat with Prabhupada and presented a facade of godliness, but who later smoked cigarettes and showed other signs of low character. Once a group of devotees complained to Prabhupada about these hypocritical Indians, but Prabhupada told them the story of the bee and the fly. The bee and the fly. The bee, he explained, always looks for honey, and the fly for a nasty sore or infection. The devotee should be like the honeybee and see the good in others, not like the fly looking for the faults. Prabhupada's disciples discovered that the best way to learn to live in India was to follow exactly what Prabhupada did. When taking prasadam with him at someone's home, they would eat the same foods as he and in the same order. When he would finish, they would finish. And when he would wash his hands, they would wash. Life in India was strange, even bewildering. And Prabhupada's disciples did not have Prabhupada's vision of his mission in India, but they were following him like little ducks wherever he went. As the devotees came closer to Prabhupada and witnessed more of his unique qualities, they came to love him more than ever. Sitting in his room on a white cushion and leaning back on the white bolster, Prabhupada appeared golden-hued and regal, despite his simple surroundings. The devotees could see that he was unaffected by his surroundings, whether in Los Angeles, where he had lived comfortably amid opulence, or in Calcutta. He was at home in India, but he was not just another Indian, not even just another Indian sadhu. He was unique, and he was theirs. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada lilamrta ki. All right. Any comments, Maharaj, you'd like to offer? Anyone? Comments, questions? All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.